Hi everyone, happy June. Yay, we made it. Oh, it is summer now for sure. Temps are going up, although they're still kind of cool in the evening, but and through the night, but that's not too bad. I relish the warmth for my plants. So I'm here in the bean arbor. My beans are probably about 4 to 5 inches high. They have yet to climb all the way up the trellis and make this my nice, safe, shady spot for the summer, and to be able to retreat to a cool spot in the garden. But what I wanted to talk about in this video is June chores. Okay, hopefully, I hope you're in an area where you've gotten all of your crops in and your last frost date has passed, and you can look forward to the bounty that your garden is going to give you throughout the summer. Now all my plants are in. So June chores. Okay, now that the things have gotten into the ground, those seeds that you've planted hopefully have sprouted already or are on the way to their germination. I have a few things that haven't germinated yet. Some of the chores that have to be done since your plants have already established themselves. For instance, my peppers and my tomatoes that I started indoors are now firmly rooted in the ground. They've spread their roots out into my growing medium here, and they have really started to put on a bright, vigorous flush of foliage, taking the nutrients out of my garden bed, and they have started. So I have to look at those very carefully. I have to prune them. I have to, in particular, the tomatoes. The peppers, sometimes I prune them, sometimes I don't. I will probably prune a few that look like they are big enough to handle a pruning, and I'll pinch them off so they will give me some lateral sprouts. But as I'm sitting here, right here, in a row, what I usually call my basil boulevard, right under my bean arbor. And why I plant it here, for one reason, is that it gets shade in the summertime. It'll get a bit of sun, but it gets shade. Now basil likes to bolt when things get too hot, but if I plant it under this arbor, it gets a little bit of shade during the day, and it won't bolt as quickly. And it especially won't bolt if I pinch all those flowers off. So I wanted to show you what I will do. Here they are right here. Now these are cinnamon basil, and I am just going to, right now, they aren't very bushy, but they do have lateral sprouts coming out, but I really want to encourage those. So I'm going to just pinch off the heads of these, and that will encourage those to sprout more, and I'll be able to have a bushier basil plant. This is cinnamon basil. Already it smells wonderful. This is a sweet basil, a Genovese basil. I'm going to do the same to that too. I have more over here on the other side, and I will do that all along here so I have a nice bushy basil plant, and that'll give me plenty of leaves to harvest throughout the summer. So I use May for planting, and planting the seedlings that I have that I've started indoors, and planting seeds directly into my beds. And also in May, I like to get the weeds under control. A lot of springtime flush of annual weed seeds that pop up in the garden. I like to take care of them and keep on top of them all in May. Now I don't keep on top of them the rest of the summer because I've got harvest coming in and all that kind of stuff, but by the time June rolls around, mid to end of June, your plants are getting big enough that hopefully they're shading out the soil around them. If you haven't put any kind of a mulch around them, at least the leaves are starting to shade the soil and your weeds won't be as prevalent as they were in the springtime. So that's what I do in May, get a handle on my weeds so I don't have to do so much weeding in June. Now, another thing on my schedule in June is fertilizing. Now, the seedlings that I started indoors, they got a shot of nitrogen fertilizer in the form of a fish emulsion as they were growing up. And then once I put them outside, I gave them a little bit more fish emulsion. But they've been in the garden and growing for minimum of 2, more like 3 or 4 weeks in some instances. So now's the time to give them a side dressing of an all-purpose fertilizer that will seep down into the soil, down into the roots. And that's what I use June for. Around the 1st and 2nd weeks of June, everything in the garden gets another boost of fertilizer. So I'm getting ready to fertilize in here. This is the fertilizer that I've chose to use this year. I used some of this last year and it seemed to do pretty good. So really follow the directions on the label. But generally, I just side dress my my plants with just a wee bit enough of sprinkling, kind of dusting around each plant. These big ones, these up here in the front, these are called lunchbox peppers. I've already have a few peppers on them already. They seem to take off like nobody's business. Even more so than my other pepper seedlings. And then I just come and I scratch it in ever so lightly into the soil, and then I'll come and give it a nice watering. Here are my tomato plants, and they are looking spectacular in this row here. But I have to train these to grow up onto the trellis. So not only do I have to start attaching them to the trellis because they seem to be, and they seem to be just at the right height to be able to do that. Oh, and look what is coming up. We have some blossoms here that are going to be opening future fruit. So what I do is I don't totally grow my tomatoes by pruning off all the suckers, but I do prune the early ones until they get up to about this height, till they start reaching into the trellis. So what I have to do is I have to come along and I have to prune everything here. And particularly I want to prune them because I don't want the foliage on the ground. It might transfer disease onto the foliage and onto the whole plant, and that's not good. So the suckers and the stems come off, like here, up to about here, and then you can see here's a sucker that I will, there you go, snap off. And then I'll come back, and this guy might not quite be ready to tie to the trellis quite yet. But what I'm going to do now is any leaves that are near or touching the ground are coming off. Now I broke those first ones off with my hand, but some of these others I will clip with the clippers so I don't err and maybe ripping off part of the stem, which may lead to disease infiltrating the plant. Another June duty would be, and it's sort of a harvest duty also, I'm picking or pulling up about every other onion. That way it'll give space to the larger onions being able to bulb out. Like you can see here, I have these 3 right here. I'll probably take this one out here. Here's another one closer. I'll take this one out. And I will intentionally, when I'm making salads or whatever, start pulling. Well, I have already started to pull many of these alternating for green onions. Important over here next door is to look at the garlic and make sure there's no disease or anything hindering your garlic. If you haven't already, it would be important to mulch garlic and also mulch the onions to keep down the weeds. Now another June duty, and this one pertains to, in this particular case, this is a potato plant. Now this is a volunteer because I had potatoes in this bed last year. You can see I have cucumbers. And I was walking by just before I started filming and I saw this bug. Now that bug is the Colorado potato beetle. I had not seen any yet this year. I've been kind of diligent in looking, and now I'm looking at the undersides, and you can see I have some more right there. They're crawling away, and you can see right there, see that glossy orange? That is, those are eggs. So even though this isn't a plant that I particularly care for the harvest of it, I just let it grow to see what I can get. But now that I've recognized pests, this is an important June issue. Now the Colorado potato beetle, I will spray these plants down with a little neem oil, and you'll see how that does. I will keep my eye on it. I squished a couple of the adult beetles, but now that I see that they have been laying eggs, I'm going to have to go through and either smear off the eggs or pinch off the entire leaf that the eggs are in. And now this is most important, that I go over and look at my potato crop and see what kind of infestation I may or may not have over there. Okay, here we have, next door we have some leeks. Now my leeks have started to grow. They are not growing very quickly, but it's time now to hill up around some of these leeks. So I'm going to get some soil and put soil on either side and kind of hill it up a little bit. I have to bring in some more soil. I don't have much in this bed. The cucumbers are going to have some help getting up to the trellis. They need to get just a wee bit longer, and I will probably give them a hand with, maybe staking just a little bit of the stalk here, the stem, onto the trellis to give them some support so that they can grow up this trellis. Here's a bin of potatoes. I'm going to come over here and see if I can't pop these up and see if I have any of those beetles on here. I don't see any, but it doesn't mean that they won't be here. So I'm going to do a little preventative maintenance. I can cover these with netting, like I have over here with my cabbage and broccoli. And same with those. I can do that. Well, I don't see one, or I don't see any of these potato beetles. I could look over here. We do have some lady beetles, which is a very good thing to have. They are a beneficial insect, and hopefully they're eating the aphids or whatever other insect they find that might not be so good for my garden. Go to it, lady beetles. So as long as we're talking about pests in our garden, I thought I heard a chicken. They're a big pest in my garden. But anyway, the little six-legged pests, insects. Japanese beetles always seem to be a problem. I know they target bean plants. Now, this is odd because this is my bean arbor here. I've never had any problems with Japanese beetles on this arbor. But right behind me is my vineyard. That is inundated with Japanese beetles in some years. 5-6 years ago, I kind of waged war on the Japanese beetles. I picked them by hand and I disposed of them in a jar of soapy water, and they drowned and no more. Best time to do that is in the early morning or in the late afternoon, evening hours, and they become very lethargic. And it's easier to pick them by hand and just drop them into your soapy water dish. I did this very methodically. Every single day, every other day, because otherwise they just were stripping the leaves bare. And it was not good for the energy that the vines needed to produce the grapes. So I did this for about 3 years straight, and each year after that they seem to be less and less of a population problem. So it seemed as though the population was decreasing. So I figured that the less adults that lived, the fewer could actually go down into the ground and lay their eggs and hatch the larvae for the successive generations for the following year. Now last year I had almost none. Who is in there? I wanted to introduce you to Harriet. That was Harriet behind me. I couldn't see her. She was in the daylilies. Harriet is named after Harriet Tubman. She is a little over a year old. She was in last year's batch of hens. And my grandkids named the hens after women activists. So this is Harriet Tubman. Now Harriet is living up to her name because she's always on the move. She's always looking for a place to go, whether it be north or south or east or west. She is a loner, and she goes by herself most times, don't you? And so I wanted to introduce you to Harriet because she was the one that was behind me. I didn't even see her, but she was just rustling in the daylilies back there. Harriet is a buff Orpington. Nicest breed of bird, very friendly. They do tend to grow broody, as I've known this springtime. But she's a sweetie. So say goodbye to Harriet. Okay, there's your close-up. Okay, that was Harriet. So back to Japanese beetles. I did find that if I was very thorough and methodical and got those Japanese beetles when I saw them on that vineyard back there, that in successive generations, I would have less and less. So I've gone through and I haven't seen any yet, but this is the time of year that they do emerge and you should start seeing more and more of them. So I have to be vigilant and go and pick Japanese beetles so I'll be able to pick my grapes. I hope your June will be as exciting as my June seems to be starting off as. Just pray for just a wee bit of rain so I don't have to do so much gardening. That's another thing I have to do. I've got to get my drip irrigation started. We had a fairly wet-ish May, so I wasn't honed in on drip irrigation. Things seem to be okay by Mother Nature's standards of watering. But now, with warmer days and the full sun, I am going to need to start up my drip irrigation system. So that's coming on board here in June also. So thanks for following along with me on this video. If you haven't yet, subscribe. Pass it along if you have anybody else that might be interested in this kind of content. Give me a thumbs up. Comment if you have questions, or even if you just, tell me what you are harvesting out of your garden at this time of year. I'd be curious to know. So until the next time we can go digging in the dirt, happy gardening. Bye.